Hey guys, this is Virtual Environmental Education. This is our ninth lesson, which is on energy resources. I'm Anna. I'm the co-president of Sustainability Club, which is the club that created this program.
Hi guys, I'm Joseph. I'm the other co-president of Sustainability Club.
Hi, my name is Luz, and I'm an environmental volunteer.
Hi, my name's Nayeli, and I'm also a volunteer.
All right, let's head into it.
So what is an energy resource? An energy source is a source from which useful energy can be extracted or recovered either directly or by a conversion or transformation process. So there are two classifications of energy sources. There's a primary energy source, which is resources that are in their natural form, such as coal, wind, or solar energy. Those are all primary energy sources. They're just the direct material. And then there are secondary energy sources, which are resources that are converted into electricity from raw materials. So taking like the sun or the coal and turning that into electrical power. The electrical power that's created is that secondary energy source. So in this photo, there's a couple different energy source makers, such as there's wind turbines, there's a solar power plant farm, there's oil rig, and then there's a steam power plant, as you can see in this photo.
So why do we need energy resources? Energy is very important in today's world because we use it for a variety of technology that we use in our daily lives. We need it for cars, planes, trains, and other vehicles, which all use fossil fuels to allow them to work. Energy provides us with light at school or at home, and it also can keep us warm during the winter or cooler during the summer using air conditioning or heating technologies. Electricity also powers TVs, computers, cell phones, and many other energy-dependent devices that we use. And without energy and electrical energy, our life as we know it would be completely different. We depend on it so much than we used to hundreds of years ago, and we wouldn't even be able to have contact with other people if we didn't have sources of energy and electricity.
So, what are non-renewable resources? A non-renewable resource is a natural resource that cannot be easily replaced by natural means at a quick enough pace to keep up with consumption. This means that the product is not able to be used all the time and it can run out. This also means that the non-renewable resources are limited in supply and cannot be used 100% sustainably.
What is a fossil fuel? Fossil fuel is a term that is used to describe a group of energy sources that were formed from ancient plants and organisms during the Carboniferous period. This period was approximately 286 to 360 million years ago, which was prior to the age of dinosaurs. There are three main types of fossil fuels, which are coal, natural gas, and oil. Also, fossil fuel makes up 82% of the global energy supply, and this is very concerning because fossil fuels release greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
The first fossil fuel we're going to talk about today is coal. Coal was formed from the ferns, plants, and trees, which hardened over time due to the pressure and heat of the Earth's core being applied. So over millions of years, this pressure and this heat and this temperature was just being constantly applied to these plants until it made these black solid rocks known as coal. So when you typically mine coal, it's typically found as a solid brownish black rock in the earth, and it's an abundant resource because there's a lot of it still on the planet today. The high abundance of it allows for companies to use it to burn for energy. Coal is also a major source of energy in the production of electrical power using steam generation. And coal, being a high carbon resource, contains a lot of carbon in it, emits a lot of carbon emissions when it is broken down or burned.
So another type of fossil fuel that we're going to talk about today is oil. Oil is formed by smaller organisms such as zooplankton and algae. And over time, intense amounts of pressure causes complex organic matter to decompose into the substance that we know as oil. So this basically means that it decays. So it's organic organisms that are decaying. Oil is used for heating and transportation, and its most notable use is as fuel for gas-powered vehicles such as cars. Over the past few years, oil prices have increased as the amount of it has decreased, and this just basically means that because it's a non-renewable resource, there's not an infinite supply of it on the planet. And so as we use more oil, the availability of it decreases. So this could be seen as, let's say I had a pie and I decided to eat one slice of the pie every day. The pie would go a lot faster than if I decided to eat one slice of the pie once a week. So we can preserve our oil reserves for much longer if we slow down the use of it, which we currently aren't doing.
So the last type of fossil fuel we'll talk about today is natural gas. Natural gas undergoes the same process as oil. However, the process is longer and subject to higher amounts of heat and pressure, causing further decomposition. Natural gas is abundant in the United States, which makes it cheaper. It also can be used as an alternative to fuel vehicles, which is a more efficient way to power cars than using oil.
Other types of non-renewable energy include nuclear energy. Nuclear power is the use of nuclear reactions that release nuclear energy to generate heat, which most frequently is then used in steam turbines to produce electricity in a nuclear power plant. The heat for the water comes from splitting atoms in a reactor, and it generates energy. 95 nuclear reactors in 29 states generate nearly 20% of the nation's electricity. All of this energy is produced without carbon emissions because nuclear reactors use uranium, which is a radioactive element, and not fossil fuels. But even though it sounds like a good situation to use nuclear energy, it is non-renewable because we have a limited amount of uranium on the planet.
Another type of non-renewable energy is nuclear fusion. Nuclear fusion is a reaction in which two or more atomic nuclei, or the centers of atoms, are combined to form one or more different atomic nuclei or subatomic particles. So the energy in this process comes from the fact that there's a difference in mass between the reactants, which are the things that are going into the equation or into this process, and the products, which is the stuff being produced or like made. So when the difference in this mass is either released as energy or it can sometimes be absorbed in certain cases. On Earth, this process is most easily done using two hydrogen isotopes. Isotopes are just different forms of an element. They just contain different amounts of neutrons in their elements. So for example, scientists typically use tritium, which is a hydrogen isotope, and it's the same as hydrogen, except it has two neutrons. And then another one is tritium, I think, and it uses 3 neutrons instead of 2 neutrons. They're still considered, though, part of the hydrogen classification of atom. And it's also important to note that this process is done at extremely high temperatures because only at high temperatures can hydrogen be used to provide energy. And a common example of nuclear fusion that happens every day, all the time, would be in stars. So like our sun goes through this process in its core because its core is super, super hot. And so it allows for the hydrogen to provide energy and be released.
So what are renewable resources? We already talked about non-renewable resources, but what is the contrast between the two? Renewable energy is often referred to as clean energy, and it comes from natural resources or processes that can be continuously replenished. So this just means that we have an unlimited supply of it, or we can continuously make this energy as time goes on at a much faster rate than we can with non-renewable energy, and we can use it infinitely, as with non-renewable energy, we wouldn't be able to use it as long because eventually we would run out of it. Other types of renewable energy are tidal wave energy, geothermal, biomass, and hydropower. And then we also will cover wind energy and solar energy, and these are two of the most well-known types of renewable energy.
So the first type of renewable energy we'll talk about is solar energy. So solar power is energy from the sun that is converted into thermal or electric energy. So if you're thinking about thermal energy, that's what would heat or cool your house. And the electrical energy is like an outlet and you plug something into your outlet. It is most abundant and the cleanest renewable energy source. Solar power is abundant because sunlight is basically everywhere. And as we'll talk about, this is solar panels are accessible on top of houses and many places. Technologies using solar energy can harness this energy for a variety of uses, including generating electricity, providing light, a comfortable interior environment, and heating water for domestic, commercial, or industrial use. So like we talked about before, comfortable interior environment, heating and cooling, and heating water for commercial use. That's like big businesses you can think of using solar panels. Solar energy can be used in most places, such as homes, as well on a commercial scale. So solar energy is harnessed through solar panels, and solar panels come in many different sizes, which makes it very accessible for homes. Like in Chicago, if you see solar panels on top of the houses, those are collecting the sunlight, and then it's turned into the solar energy. And also big businesses and commercial businesses, they are able to use solar panels as well.
Another type of renewable resource includes wind power. Wind energy or wind power refers to the process of creating electricity using the wind or airflows that occur naturally in the Earth's atmosphere. Modern wind turbines use kinetic energy, which kinetic energy is the energy of motion. So any object in motion is using kinetic energy that is generated from the wind and turn that kinetic energy into electricity. There are two types of wind power. Utility scale wind, which are wind turbines that range in size from 100 kilowatts to several megawatts, where the electricity is delivered to the power grid and distributed to the end user by electric utilities or power system operators. Distributed or small wind, which are single small wind turbines below 100 kilowatts that are used to directly power a home, farm, or small business and are not connected to the grid.
Wave and tidal power is used as a renewable resource. So in the ocean or in large bodies of water that can produce waves, there are special buoys, turbines, and other technologies that can capture the kinetic or moving energy of waves and tides to turn turbines and convert it into clean, pollution-free electrical power. Like other renewable resources, both wave and tidal energy are variable in nature. And as we talked about a couple of lessons ago, this is because of many different factors, such as the time of year it is, or just depending on what the moon is like in relation to the earth, as well as the variation of other factors. Since waves travel across the ocean, their arrival time at the wave power facility may be more predictable than wind at some times, just because wind, it's hard to track wind currents as compared to tracking like the ocean currents. You're more easily able to track ocean currents and see where they're going and determine which times that it'll arrive at the power facility. But there is a downside to wave and tidal power as a renewable resource. Since waves and tides are only found in large bodies of water, such as large lakes like Lake Michigan, or in the ocean, such as the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans, it kind of restricts where they can be placed. So, for example, if you were to take like a small town in Kansas with no water, you couldn't put a wave tidal power place there. But maybe east of California, you could put a bunch, just depending on how the waves are and like where the body of water is.
Another type of renewable resource is geothermal. Geothermal energy is heat derived from within the subsurface of the Earth. Water and steam carry the geothermal energy to the Earth's surface. So for electricity generation, high or medium temperature resources are needed, which are usually located close to tectonically active regions. And this just means a region that is close to a tectonic plate. So a region like California, where there are many earthquakes per year, and maybe Japan, which experiences tsunamis. That means that they're close to a tectonic plate just because earthquakes and tsunamis are both caused by the shift of tectonic plates. This renewable resource covers a significant share of electricity demand in countries like Iceland, El Salvador, New Zealand, Kenya, and the Philippines. And due to how geothermal energy is sourced, it is not dependent on weather conditions and therefore can provide a baseline power for some places. So energy resources such as wind power or solar, they're both dependent on the conditions of the weather. So if a certain day is not sunny, we're not going to be receiving that much solar power. And the same as if a day is there's absolutely no wind, we won't receive as much wind power for that day. So geothermal energy is just a viable energy resource that we could use continuously at a consistent rate, just because we can keep on using it nevertheless of what the weather conditions are that day. The only thing is that there's a limitation to it because geothermal energy isn't located everywhere. As I said it before, it's usually close to tectonically active regions, but not every region on the planet is going to be tectonically active. So in Chicago, we likely would not be able to use geothermal energy. And that's just because we're not really located near any tectonic plates. But in Yellowstone National Park, they could probably use geothermal energy just because it is located right next to a huge super geyser.
So another type of renewable resource is biomass. Biomass is an organic plant or animal material, and there's two main categories, traditional and modern. Traditional is burning biomass such as wood and charcoal to provide energy. So instead of cooking your meat or your vegetables on a gas stove or oven, you can use a charcoal grill, and that's one example of using traditional biomass. And modern biomass is bioenergy that uses liquid biofuels made from plants and other organic matter. Biomass has significant potential to boost energy supplies in populous nations with rising demands, such as Brazil, India, and China. China emits the most fossil fuels in the world, and by them using biomass, they can reduce their emissions. And the emissions cause greenhouse gases to be stuck. So therefore, by reducing their greenhouse gas emissions, that would overall help reduce the acceleration of global warming and climate change. And this goes for many other populous regions as well, but specifically China, as they have the most emissions. And right now, Brazil currently leads the world in liquid biofuels, and that fits under the umbrella of biomass.
Another type of renewable resource includes hydropower. Hydropower is energy that is derived from the kinetic energy of flowing water. The basic principle of hydropower is using water to drive turbines, as it is a cheaper method of providing energy. Some countries, such as Norway, have 99% of their energy coming from hydropower. It is among the most cost-effective means of generating electricity and is often the preferred method where available. And also, small-scale mini hydropower projects can make a big difference to communities in remote locations because it might be the only possible energy source available to them that is both consistent and reliable.
So, how all of the energy resources relate to climate change? So, as we've mentioned in previous lessons, that fossil fuels have contributed a significant amount to greenhouse gas emissions, and greenhouse gases again trap in heat, which can cause an accelerated global warming. This leads to a lot of climate change. According to the EPA, they've done some research, and they found that as the temperature of Earth gets warmer, or as sea levels rise, or as anything that climate change, the effects of climate change bring on, happen to humans, that we will become more energy dependent, and use more energy in efforts to keep us comfortable. So an example to paint out this is, if the temperature of Earth gets warmer, so the summers will get hotter, we might want to use more AC. Well, then, since there's more AC being used, it requires more energy to be used. And then these companies that provide energy, right, they have to make more energy to provide to us, the consumers, the people who are using the energy. And then, so since they have to produce more energy, they have to burn more fossil fuels. Well, burning more fossil fuels would release more greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere and trap even more heat. And it just becomes a complete cycle of just damaging the environment and causing it to get warmer. This loop of damage will lead to irreversible changes and will create some issues for us as humans, which is why it's important to relate this to sustainability.
So, building off of what Joseph said, why are energy resources important to sustainability? They're important to sustainability because we need to begin restricting the amount of non-renewable energy, such as fossil fuels, that we use. As non-renewable energy is not a finite or unlimited source of energy, it is not sustainable to use it in a fashion that will lead to its total depletion within time. This would mean that we have none of that resource left at all. Fossil fuels also release greenhouse gas emissions, which increases the rate of global warming, which is also unsustainable because global warming causes climate change, which disrupts sustainability patterns across the planet. In order to be sustainable, we must begin to completely switch over to renewable energy resources because they do not contribute to global warming and climate change, and they can be used infinitely. All right, that's the end of our lesson.